Only my gifted younger sister was treasured by my parents, who gave her extra attention. Nevertheless, I kept sending money home to help her pay for her medical school education. My parents told me, after all, she couldn't become a doctor, so you must become one instead, before I had a chance to grieve her untimely passing. If they believed I would comply, they were totally misinformed. Claire is my name. I'm 23 years old and unmarried. Since leaving home after middle school, I have been living alone. I was raised in a very impoverished family. My father was unable to stay employed for very long. He quit jobs often and eventually worked just part-time, even that he came to despise and lost his job. He did nothing around the house in spite of this. He insisted that my mother quickly prepare dinner and get all of tomorrow's lunch ready when she arrived home exhausted from work. The room needs to be cleaned. Make sure the bath is clean and ready for me to use immediately. Also, get my change of clothes ready. I'll be upset if you forget. I didn't think such a father was valuable when I was a kid. He was just an annoyance. My mother, however, loved this type of man. She appeared to be drawn to worthless guys, and my father had a way of holding on to women like that. My mother eventually became unwell as a result of the stress she endured while following his instructions. This was when our family started to deteriorate. It was only a matter of time until our household collapsed due to the absence of our primary provider. Even a part-time work twice a week made a big difference in our family's income. My father insisted on a high quality of living in spite of this. In these circumstances, our household's financial situation rapidly deteriorated. However, we were unable to obtain welfare aid. This was because my father was in good health, and there was no reason why he couldn't work, and we lived in a home that my grandparents had left us. We gradually lost the backing of any family members who were willing to lend a hand after pleading for loans on numerous occasions. Getting food was the hardest thing. I was only able to keep surviving because of school lunches. The worst of the crisis was during extended school breaks. My father ate a sumptuous steak every day, but I would only get a little piece of bread. My mom was pleased to see this. This was an everyday occurrence in our home. To make sure my sister never had to go through the same struggles, I would always reply with a reprimand shout when I stated, "I'm hungry, my mother." I used the money I got as Christmas presents to buy her meals. My emotional support system was my sister, who is 5 years younger than myself. She would grin and say, "Big sister, I love you," which helped to soften the terrible reality. I was always loved by her, and she would say, "Big sister, big sister." I don't think we could have made it through without one another. But things took a significant turn for the worst as my sister advanced in her education. She unexpectedly passed a prominent school's entrance exam. She was exceptionally intelligent, but it was uncommon for a youngster from a family like ours to take such tests. From an early age, she was able to read and comprehend my textbooks with ease. She completed my schoolwork with ease and was also proficient in arithmetic. During homework time, I responded to her inquiries, even though I didn't think she would fully comprehend. However, geniuses do exist, and she was undoubtedly one. But we didn't have the money for tutoring, and we weren't studying for tests. My sister and my parents didn't prepare for interviews. Most importantly, our family was poor. I only took the test for the experience. Nevertheless, our parents were ecstatic when she passed away gloriously. She had been admitted to a prestigious elementary school, after all, where aspiring physicians, attorneys, and politicians receive their education. However, a poor family like ours could not afford the exorbitant tuition for a private school. My parents decided to further reduce our household spending as a result. This amounted to essentially disregarding my existence. I was in 6th grade when my sister entered 1st grade. My meals were no longer made after that day. How could I stay alive? Bringing leftovers from school meals home was the only choice. I occasionally consumed moldy bread on extended vacations. I never got new clothes and endured the embarrassment of wearing hand-me-downs from friends. I couldn't bathe properly, washing myself in the river during summer, and just wiping my body during winter. I rinsed my hair with water from the school tap. Occasionally, friends, families, or neighbors extended a helping hand, but they were still outsiders. There were no reports of abuse, nor did I seek help. Yet I always longed for something. It was my parents' affection. "Hey, Mom, I got a high score on today's test." "Shut up." "Hey, Dad, I was the top in today's PE." "Shut up." No matter how hard I tried, I was only scolded with "shut up." When I tried to share something praiseworthy, I felt I should just keep quiet. However, in such circumstances, my parents showed affection only to my sister. They left me at home on her birthday and enjoyed dining out and giving her gifts as a trio. To avoid embarrassing her, I bought her many high-quality clothes. The child allowance meant for me and my mother's modest income were all used for my sister. "Be a fine doctor in the future," my mother continued to tell her. "Become rich and take care of us." "You're different from your sister," my father said. In the midst of excessive affection for my talented sister, I witnessed my parents' selfish nature and decided not to expect anything from them. Somehow, I graduated from middle school and chose to work instead of continuing my education. I had long given up on my dreams of further studies. After middle school, I desperately searched for a job and eventually found a live-in position at a farm in the countryside. I knew nothing about agriculture, but the mere fact that I could leave my home made me feel truly happy. Although I was worried about my sister, I could not stay at home any longer. It would have led to the collapse of my own mental health. My parents had high expectations for her and loved her excessively, even if it was a twisted form of love. My sister was living a decent life. I reassured myself that she would be fine without me. Thinking I was finally free from that bondage brought temporary relief. "Since we've taken care of you all this time, send us money," my parents demanded. I had no memory of them taking care of me, yet my father said, "If you don't send money, your dear sister won't be able to go to school." He threatened me. It felt like blackmail, but considering my sister, I couldn't refuse. Perhaps I was still hoping to be recognized by my parents through my remittances. I still can't forget my sister's face as she cried, "Big sister, don't go," on the day I left home. She had always told me, "I love you, big sister," since she was young. She must have understood that our parents' love was not unconditional, but an investment in their future. Yet knowing she was living well, I parted from my sister while holding back tears. Since then, I have continued to send money home. The workplace I was hired at was a large-scale dairy farm housing many cows. Since taking care of animals was a daily necessity, it was hard for family-run businesses to take breaks. Thus, they had increased staff to ensure vacations could be taken. I was the first employee from outside the family, and both my employers and I struggled to adjust to each other. Still, the days were fulfilling and enjoyable. As I got used to the work, I also started receiving praise. The more I worked, the more I earned, and my efforts were recognized with raises. Moreover, the cows seemed to have gradually gotten used to me. I was fully committed to this job. Being expected to perform was incredibly satisfying to me. However, I had no money to use freely. I continued to send all I could to support my sister. Before I knew it, I turned 20, and around the time my sister graduated from middle school, I received a letter from her. It detailed how she was enduring the pressure of our parents' expectations and striving to become a doctor. "I'll come to see you when I become a doctor," she wrote. I hugged that letter tightly. My sister was working hard. I must not lose to her, I resolved anew. 3 years had passed, and just as she was about to graduate high school, another letter from her arrived. I passed the medical school entrance exam, it declared strongly. "Wow, well done," I exclaimed aloud. The road ahead would be even tougher, with 4 years of study required for medical school. She was expected to be busy with national exams and training. I had no idea how many years it would be until we could meet again after she started working as a doctor. But I was determined to support her fully. Realizing I also needed to strive harder, I rolled up my sleeves. That leads up to today. At 23, two unexpected figures appeared before me. Focused on supporting my sister, could it be Dad? It had been 8 years since I graduated from middle school, and my parents had never visited. I hadn't wanted to see them either. The two before me looked somewhat like they used to, but also like two different people. My father had gained a lot of weight. My mother was wearing lots of flashy jewelry, dazzling to the eyes. This situation gave me a bad feeling. The money I sent, was it used for my sister? I asked. "We used it," my mother replied immediately. "A part of your remittances. The rest we used for ourselves because it would be a waste not to," she continued. What? I couldn't hide my shock. Was this a joke? Seeing my mother's smirk, I raised my voice. "Did you also indulge in luxuries, Dad?" I asked him. "Well, yes," he replied. "You sent so much money that we couldn't use it all up. We had no choice but to eat a lot of meat, and I ended up this fat," he said, laughing and pointing at his belly. "I sent it because you kept saying you were short on money." "Mom, you said you didn't want my sister to starve, so I sent a lot," I said. "Did I say that?" "I don't remember," my mother countered. The selfish pair had only gotten worse, swarming around my money without caring about my disgust. Feeling it was futile to listen any longer, I took a deep breath and asked, "So what do you want all of a sudden?" "Is she at home?" I really wanted to see my sister rather than such parents. Thinking this, I asked, but my mother's answer was unexpected. "Ah, that girl. She's no longer here." "Wait, what? What do you mean she left home?" I worried that my sister had left home because she couldn't endure it anymore, but I was shocked by the response. "No, she passed away." "What?" I exclaimed. This was more shocking than her having left home. "You're joking, right?" That joke is too much. I didn't want to believe it, but my mother said, "It's true, my sister had died in a freak accident. She fell down the old stairs at home and tragically lost her life. Our very old house had severely worn stairs, and if there was money for jewels and expensive meat, there should have been funds to repair the house." My sister, overcome with sleepiness, misstepped. It can't be true. I didn't want to believe it. However, when I was told that the funeral was already over, there was nothing I could do. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to see her one last time. We only buried her in the grave." "What was there, a funeral?" I asked in shock, to which my mother casually laughed and replied, "Funerals cost money." "That's terrible," I said. "What terrible?" she asked. "That's exactly what we'd like to say. Who would have thought it would end like this?" She had just been accepted to medical school. All the money we spent was wasted, my mother declared. My father nodded in agreement. Their own child had died, and that's all they could say. "You're the worst. To think your parents—" "No, I wonder about you as people," I said angrily, turning away from them. I couldn't bear to keep looking at their faces. However, my mother grabbed my shoulder, saying, "Wait a minute," and made me turn back. They were still laughing. "What now?" I indicated with my eyes that I wanted to leave quickly. Eventually, I intended to visit my sister's grave when things settled down. My mind was filled with memories of my sister and plans for the future. My mother broke the silence with the declaration. In the end, she couldn't become a doctor, so you must become one instead. "What?" I exclaimed in surprise. "What are you talking about? How can I get into medical school without even graduating high school?" "Just study again and get a high school diploma. Look at reality. I'm already ready. What you want doesn't matter." As I raised my voice in protest, my mother shouted even louder, "If she can't do it, you have to. It's only natural for children to support their parents. So become a doctor and earn well to take care of us." My father also raised his voice. "That's right. Quit this dirty, smelly ranch and become a doctor who earns more. Then we can boast about you to the relatives we've drifted apart from, and maybe we can be proud of you." I couldn't stand it anymore. To think they could maybe be proud of me. Were they mocking me? Did they know how much I've suffered? Realizing that shouting was a waste of time, I forcefully shook off my mother's hand. What I had always obeyed my parents. I always sent them money and was expected to obey, but I've changed. That kind of thinking didn't work anymore, but my new principles were incomprehensible to them. "Wait, if you don't obey, we'll come here every day and disrupt your work." I stopped in my tracks at my mother's words. "Well, then go ahead." If this were a scene in a cartoon, there would be sound effects like Gago around me, and a dark aura would be emanating. "Well, if that's how it is, why don't you come here every day?" I suggested. "What?" They asked, confused, tilting their heads. Minutes after, they followed me. An eek suddenly erupted at that moment. The leisurely mooing of the cows filled the air. "What is this?" "It's all poop," my mother screamed. "Sorry about that. Next time I'll tell the cows to use the toilet," I replied. "It stinks." "What is this?" "It smells terrible," my father complained. "That's what work is like. Didn't you know?" I said today the work took longer because my parents were with me. I hurried to clean the cowshed. The cleanliness of the cowshed is crucial here. "Mom, use this," I said, handing her a large shovel. "What is this?" my mother asked, puzzled. "It's just a shovel," I answered. "What do I do with this?" she asked further. "It's for cleaning up poop," I told her. "What?" my mother exclaimed in shock. "Come on, get moving," I urged her as I pushed her from behind. Her jewelry clinked, and a ring slipped off her finger. It landed perfectly on top of a pile of cow dung. "EK, my ring," she screamed. "Just pick it up and wash it," I replied. "That's impossible. I never want to wear it again." "You have to compensate me," she demanded. "You dropped it yourself, so deal with it yourself," I stated flatly. While my mother was ranting, I handed a broom to my father, who seemed lost. "Huh, a broom? Why?" "I want you to clean up the scattered grass." "Why?" "If you're going to come every day, then help out." I raised my voice without room for argument. I forcefully handed him the broom again. However, I did not expect them to take the task seriously. As they worked grudgingly, I said firmly, "Since I don't hear any more talk about aiming to be a doctor, I guess I don't need to send money anymore." They started working hurriedly. Despite what I said, there was no way I was going to send money to these people. After my sister's death, children are obligated to support their parents. But that line is for parents who have actually raised their children properly. In front of my busy parents, I brought out a large blower. "Huh, Claire, what is that?" It's a hassle, so I'll just blow it all away, I answered. The moment I said it, I switched on the blower. Immediately, a powerful wind began to blow, and naturally, I directed it not at the cows or the grass, but at my parents. Whoa, wait. Claire, wait, my father yelled. He opened his mouth, but the strength of the wind distorted his face. The grass got in my mouth. My mother screamed. No matter how hard they tried, grass kept getting into their mouths. Now that it's clean, let's feed the cows here. Mom, this is a bundle of hay. It's hard. How am I supposed to give this to the cows? My mother questioned. Break it down into smaller pieces before you feed them. Dad, here's a bag of mixed feed. Hay, Claire. Dad's got a heavy body and can't move around easily. Is that correct? Isn't it beneficial for dieting? Considering how they gripe about their bulk, I answered. Pushing the bags in their direction, I carried on feeding the animals myself. They were given cleaning and milking instructions, but they barely moved and continued to grumble. Totally pointless. To believe you were so bold as to demand funds and assistance. What? My sister worked hard until she got into medical school, I said, casting a chilly glance at my weary parents. I gave her financial help. What did you do? My mother recoiled at my icy tone. What were you eating while I was going hungry? When you left your family behind, did you enjoy the steak? My stare terrified my father, and he stopped talking. To my parents, I might still be 15 years old, but I'm an adult now. Oh, I see. Because I was unable to take a bath, I used to wash myself with cold water, I recalled. You've worked hard, haven't you, Mom and Dad? I pointed to a bucket of water and remarked, You're dirty, grinning broadly as I scooped it up. My parents turned their backs. Claire, you're not. My mom had a perplexed expression. My father's face twisted instantly. I yelled, I'll clean you up, and gave them a good water splash. EK, it's cold, exclaimed my parents. Even though spring is almost here, it's still a little cold. There must have been a cool scent to the bucket's water. Then I grabbed a rag and said, Cold, then wash and dry up with this, and you'll warm up. Wait, hold on, is what my mother fought. I underlined, I'll wash away your bad attitudes. She yelled, Stop, it's dirty. My mother's face was plastered on, I scrubbed crimson, and I cleansed my father's sticky face from being so overweight. The owner, an older man, heard the disturbance and inquired, What sort of people are you? He was surprised to see my parents on the ground after returning from a community event. The owner, who was previously aware of the situation, expressed sympathy once I discreetly described it. That must have been tough. I went over to my father, who may have shed a few pounds, and my mother, whose expensive clothing were now filthy. You say you'll be here every day until I'm a doctor, correct? By the way, get up at 5 in the morning. When I said, See you then, my mother jumped up in surprise. My mother countered, Who would come to such a place every day? Oh, that's all right. I'll stop donating money, and I won't pursue a career in medicine. That's different, replied my mom. It's not different at all, I answered. I lowered my voice and adjusted my tone while my mother persisted in her whining. Claire, what? You ought to express your gratitude to my diligent sister and lament her passing before requiring me to get a medical degree and provide money. In addition, I would like an apology and words of appreciation for the money I sent. I'll put you in the barn right now if you're unable to accomplish it. Wait, Justa. After saying, I'm not waiting, I lost my temper and tossed a bunch of hay. My parents' cries of, Please forgive us, were the release of years' worth of suppressed feelings. I was still throwing hay. The owner whispered, Wow, this is something, in the barn. My parents never returned to the ranch after that. Relatives claim that after I stopped sending money, they vanished. My parents were left without money. The money they received, even after selling the old house, rapidly ran out. They were totally shunned when they attempted to borrow from family members once more. I hope that by working from now on, they are able to live comfortably. All I had left after losing the family home and going to my sister's grave was a picture of her as a child. A relative gave me another picture of her that showed her as an adult. I sobbed as I said, "I wish I could have met you," to the picture. I'm still employed in the dairy sector. The proprietor's kid, who is about my age, is doing well. I'm still not sure if I'll become a dairy farmer's wife, but I'm determined to give it my all in whatever direction I go. Without a doubt, my sister gave her life her all. I stated to the picture, "You would have been a great doctor," but naturally there was no response. I put the picture in my chest, closed it, and kept it in my pass case. All right, let's work hard. I told myself to keep going. I turned around at that moment, big sister, thinking I heard a young voice, but there was nobody there. The only people staring at me were the cows, who were waiting for their meal. With a gentle touch on its big body, I remarked, "Good job, you're such a good girl." I told myself, well, let's do our best today as well, as I gazed up at the azure sky.